So we're finally going to get this trans guidance for teachers, which was supposed to have been... They started consulting this in 2018, and we're told teachers will not have to use preferred pronouns of pupils who want to socially transition.
Well, a few minutes ago, Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch spoke on the new guidance.
Schools have asked for because they are struggling with dealing with what is a relatively new phenomenon of children questioning their gender. This is a very serious thing, and social transitioning, as we've described in the guidance, is not a neutral act, and it is something that parents should be made aware of at the earliest opportunity.
Stonewall say there is considerable evidence that social transition improves the mental health of trans children and young people. Are you concerned that this guidance will push trans children to stay in the closet and impact their mental health or the mental health of the trans community?
No, that is not something I'm concerned about. And I should stress that we fundamentally disagree with Stonewall's analysis. We fundamentally disagree with their facts. The CAS review has shown that social transitioning is not a neutral act. It puts children on a medical pathway that can lead to irreversible medical decisions, the use of puberty blockers, and so on. But also, something that's really important to emphasize is that just because a child doesn't conform to gender stereotypes doesn't mean that they are the opposite sex. We shouldn't assume that because a boy likes pink or a girl likes football, that they are of the opposite sex. We need to make sure that schools understand what is going on, and that is what this guidance is there to achieve.
There is a risk, though, surely.
OK, well, that's the Equalities Minister, Kemi Badenoch, speaking just a few moments ago on this new guidelines.
A bit of common sense. Ben Habib is here from the Reform UK.
Well,
common sense?
It is common sense. And funny enough, when I read it, I thought, great, a bit of common sense. But the reason you and I are both saying, all three of us are saying it's a bit of common sense, is because we're so used to hearing utterly balmy stuff coming out that this relatively... this something that we should take utterly for granted, for example, that you shouldn't assume just because a child says that they're not male, that they actually genuinely are not feeling male, that parents should be consulted on how children are treated at school.
Of course.
All of this stuff, which we should take for granted, we now regard as some kind of move towards common sense. And one thing I'll take issue with, and with Kemi there, is that, you know, she said schools are finding themselves increasingly having to deal with the phenomena of students no longer identifying as their biological sex, or words to that effect. But, of course, it's the schools who are promoting the ideology, who are sowing seeds of doubt in the minds of our children. And I think, as many commentators on GB News have said before, this, in my view, is child abuse. You know, you're actually promulgating an ideology that discombobulates a child at a very vulnerable age.
Yeah.
And they even went as far as having gender-neutral toilets, for example.
And Ben, I'm going to interrupt you there briefly, because I heard a safeguarding officer at a school yesterday in Merseyside saying, well, they can say whatever they like with the guidance, we're carrying on with our gender-neutral news at a cost of £400,000. Now, that's books and teachers and supply teachers.
A massive amount of money.
A massive amount. And I was just I'm thinking, this because it's guidance from the government, it's not the law.
Yeah, and this is deeply concerning. I mean, if you... and it's not restricted to gender ideology, by the way. You know, if you're a white, working-class child in school, basically the message you're getting from the establishment is that you're white, therefore you're privileged, and if you don't recognise that privilege, you're racist. You're white, therefore your forefathers were slave traders, and you should be ashamed of the country in which you live and its history. You can adopt any number of genders you wish, and also your very existence threatens the planet because you are carbon emitters, all of you. And every time you do X, Y, and Z, if your parents drive a car that you know, doesn't comply with the latest standards, you are damaging the environment and you're a problem. So a child coming through school now doesn't believe in their country, fears their own existence, thinks of their forefathers as having been criminals, lacks confidence, has aspiration completely drilled out of them, becomes the dependent blob I believe the state wishes to create, and is lacking entirely self-confidence. What sort of children are we creating?
Is this going to turn the clock back, what they're doing today?
Well, it's a step in the right direction, but You know, I think we're living in Rome 400 AD, and the fact that we're debating something that should be self-evident shouldn't require a debate, that parents should be consulted, that Jack shouldn't be called Jill just because Jack says he should be called Jill, that transgender ideology isn't something that should be discussed or promoted in school. I think it should be banned. I think the talk about net zero should be banned in school.
Well, Ben, to that, what do you make of Stonewall's analysis, the LGBTQ plus charity? They've said that social transition in schools actually improves the mental health of youngsters, and they feel as though this sort of guidance would keep youngsters in the closet longer.
But, well, let's just get one thing straight. 0.4% of the population are identified as transgender. This is not a widespread problem. It is an ideology that the sort of progressive social left wish to promote. And it's part of a much bigger ideology, which I was trying to indicate when I discussed that hypothetical white child at school. It's, you know, it's challenging everything that which we take for granted and which gives us confidence as individuals and British citizens. That's what's being attacked here. It's nothing less than an attack on the nation state. And it's part of the attack, without wishing to digress too much, it's part of the same attack that Suella Braverman identified when she said in Washington, Western democracies are facing an existential threat. This kind of ideology, this kind of hijacking of our children's schooling, the promotion of net zero to the point that we fear to exist, the notion that the English language needs to be decolonised because it comes from an imperial past of which we should be ashamed, that our forefathers did nothing good other than make money out of slave trade. All of this is designed to attack the nation-state that is the United Kingdom, undermine its foundations, remove self-confidence from the British people, and give succour to this progressive socialist nonsense.
And on this, Miriam Cates, a Conservative MP, has been told she's potentially being investigated for a hate crime because she retweeted a fellow Tory MP's saying of a candidate for the Green Party in Bromsgrove, I think it is, a man in a wig. Now, this is a person who identifies...
I know the one.
Who identifies as a trans woman. He's not transitioning, he's not taking drugs.
He's now Melissa or something.
But it's quite obviously a man with a wig on. She is being potentially investigated for hate crime. The police are part of this problem.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. The entire landscape is infected. And it's not something that's just become a fad. This is actually in the regulatory and legislative framework of the United Kingdom. The Equalities Act requires the promotion of people with immutable physical characteristics. Diversity, equality and inclusion, which I know we've discussed in the past as well, Andrew, requires the promotion of minority ethnic interests, minority religions, minority sexual preferences, etc., to the detriment of the majority. That's what it's about. It's about damaging the majority interest in this country.